on vacation. Can you tell? I never know what day or time it is. So thanks all for joining us for our second virtual session. I am delighted to have our special guest, Ryan, with us tonight, and he is from Love's Travel Stops. And Ryan and I met through a council that we sit on together called the Social Media Council, and that's through the conference board. And we connect over digital marketing best practices and primarily social media. And we both have a background in journalism. So I'm going to have Ryan introduce himself and talk a little bit about what he does, for Love's. Maybe just do a quick description of a typical day, and then we can get right into our questions. So welcome to Ryan.
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, awesome. I am the external communications manager for Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores. If you're not familiar with what Love's Travel Stops and Country Stores is, we are a family of companies based in Oklahoma City. A family of companies, I say, because we have travel stops. We buy our own fuel that truckers and four-wheel motorists, drivers, get at our travel stops, and we transport our own fuel. But that's not all. We're one of the largest restaurateurs in the country. We operate Subways, McDonald's, we operate Wendy's. Anytime you go to a Love's across the country and see one of those side restaurants, we run it. We also are in the hotel business. We have by the end of 2017, we'll have 14 hotels across the country. And we also dabble in the storage business. So we do a little bit of everything at this point, and I'm the external communications manager. I have a colleague who is focused on communicating internally, which, by the way, is quite the challenge unto itself, given that we have corporate employees and employees in the field. And then I have a boss who oversees communications in general for the entire organization. But a typical day for me, because I oversee social media and oversee traditional media, typically starts with a briefing. Given that it's a severe weather season, I'll check the weather across the country, make sure none of our communities were affected by severe weather. I have a number of Google alerts and meltwater alerts set up so that I can see stories that are coming across the press. And I just essentially sort of read the news, if you will, as it pertains to Love's. I check social media. I have a team of 4 people, 1 videographer, 1 person who's focused on traditional media, and then 1 person who's my social media quarterback. Her name is Liz. And she's looking at social media 24/7. And I'm sort of lightly looking at social media 24/7. I kind of know what's going on at all times, but not at the level that she does. So I brief myself at the start of the day. And then I participate in the creation of content, as does the entire team, respond to crises, help to execute traditional media strategies, and you never know what's going to come up in a given day. So as you might expect, it's pretty much 50-50 social media to traditional media. I do a lot of writing, not as much as I would like as a manager, but every day is new in this business.
Well, that's great. Thank you, Ryan. That's a great high level. And actually, some of the things that you touched on were some of the things that some of the students were curious to learn more about. So we can dive deeper into some of those things in terms of your staff and how everything works. So the way we're going to move ahead is I'm going to call on the students. They're going to introduce themselves. And if they want to share a fun fact about themselves, that would be great. And they're going to go ahead and we'll do basically a round robin. We're going to try to get through at least 2 rounds of questions from each student that's on the call. And then we have questions that were submitted from students who were following along online and live tweeting as we go. So we're going to start with Miss Marty. So Marty, take it away and kick off tonight's session.
Great. Hi, Matt. Nice to meet you virtually. And I just wanted to say that with United Airlines' big debacle in the news today, I think my question is probably pretty relevant because they've gotten a lesson the hard way in how social media can change the way they do business. So what I was curious about is how has customer feedback changed the way that Love's does business? And have you had any interesting stories you'd like to share? And I'll say my fun fact is my father was a Teamster.
Right. Oh, right. Hey, that's awesome. You know, and there are 2 ways to look at that question in terms of the impact that customer opinion has on how you do business long term. For example, sure. We're in the travel stop business, the truck stop business. Pilot Flying J TA Petro, and a lot of those folks offer laundry facilities to truck drivers who are on the road. Love's really hasn't done that in a long time, but because a lot of the social media opinion that we got over a long period of time, we are now building 80 laundry facilities in stores that exist across the country. And it's directly because of those folks on social media who let us know that laundry would make their lives a lot easier. Customer support, though, particularly when thinking about the situation that United Airlines is in, we are attuned to what our customers are saying, and we try to have genuine empathy. We try to get in their brain, if you will, creating sort of an online instant persona. We take no complaint lightly. We try to think about it from their perspective. And I think, and one of the questions sort of addresses or asks this regarding, background in journalism and how it helps with a role like this. But we try to have a good sixth sense as to things that will stay in a news cycle beyond 24 hours. To me, it was pretty obvious that the United situation was much bigger than they were giving it the attention that it deserved. But in terms of a customer feedback, there's the long term, such as things that customers would like to see in our stores. For example, they want to see less fast food and more sit-down restaurants. That's something where I can be my team can be a liaison to the customers, going back to our executive management and saying, these customers here, they're not lying to us. They would really love to see a sit-down restaurant, and they're pretty much unanimous about that. But there's also the short term, providing customer service. Most of that customer service, by the way, comes across on Facebook. But it changes the way we do business in that it is truly 24/7. We have a customer service team, by the way, that answers the phone, and they're 24/7. But before I joined in 2014, we weren't necessarily 24/7 on social media.
The earbuds work. This microphone does not. So let me grab another pair. And no.
Okay, thanks, Ryan. So we're working on, I think, someone's audio here. So that's
Cheryl,
true.
your audio worked.
Okay, Cheryl, we can hear you now, I think. Can you say hi?
Yep.
Hi.
Mute yourself now.
Excellent. Thanks, Cheryl. All right, so our next question comes from Caitlin. So Caitlin, why don't you pop on and introduce yourself to Ryan?
Hi, Ryan. Thanks for speaking with us tonight. So my question would be, Love's Travel has 420 locations in 40 states. Are there any social media challenges for implementing a campaign, or does your strategy change, or is it tweaked for the different demographics?
It is, but probably not as much as you would imagine from somebody who might purport to have a sophisticated social media operation. I will tell you that demographics of our social media users on Facebook, which is our primary platform, about 65-35 men to women. The age is distributed kind of like a bell curve, 35 to 44 being number one. And our general audience is one of two things. They are either professional drivers, truckers, or people who work in the trucking or transportation industry, or they're four-wheel motorists, people who travel on vacation like any of us. So with that said, our broad messages, we don't try to target it because not everybody puts on Facebook their employer. They don't necessarily say that they're a trucker in the employment part. So we never know whether somebody's in the transportation side or the four-wheel side, or maybe if it overlaps. So we don't do a lot there. Where we do sort of divide our content and our strategy is within trucking in general. If you're a truck driver, you either drive for a fleet, like a Swift Transportation or a Werner, or you're an owner-operator. The products and services that we sell, aside from fuel, can be customized to meet the needs of those two operations. And on Facebook in particular, you can target things to people who are employed as an owner-operator and or people who self-identify as having an interest in being an owner-operator. So we do a little bit there, but otherwise, not a heck of a lot more. But I will tell you, at the store level, we don't have a way to measure whether or not something on Facebook led directly to a sale. So that's an area where we're growing, and eventually we probably will do content, although at this point it probably would be targeted by location. A bit more about Children's Miracle Network in a bit, and there are some targeting strategies that we use there also that would also add to this answer.
Cool. Thank you.
Cool. You bet.
I always forget to unmute myself. We have a question that it comes from one of the students following along Twitter, and her name's Kathy Atkinson, and she's a photographer. And so for her, when she was doing some research and looking at your content that you have on your channel, she noticed a lot of the colorful posts, and she wanted you to speak a little bit to, what do you think about the visuals making a bigger impact on your audience? Meaning, can you speak to the visuals, the things that you have in mind when you're coming up with your content planning and how you're gathering those? You mentioned you had a videographer. Can you speak to that a little bit?
You bet. Well, Andrew is our videographer, and he is a very talented videographer. But if you'll recall some of our early conference board councils, a picture's worth 1,000 words, but a video is actually worth 1.68 million words. And when we look at the content that we post on Facebook, and I took the question as being quite the compliment, because whether it be Instagram in particular, which the primary criterion for something we post to Instagram is it a good photo? But anything that we post to Facebook, we try to have a high bar. Maybe we don't always meet that high bar, but we try to always have a high bar in terms of the quality of photo. And mind you, we get a lot of that content from our customers. They send us photos of our travel stops at sunrise, at sunset, during storms with rainbows in the background. And number one, we just hope that it's in focus. And of course, with filters on Instagram, anybody probably can look like a little bit better photographer than maybe what they are. I certainly am guilty of that on Instagram. But from a video perspective, we take a look at the metrics very closely to see how long people are watching our videos and whether or not they're sharing. I mean, sharing is the number one arbiter of whether or not you have a successful piece of content. And if they're watching the video all the way through and if they're sharing it, we try to mimic those things in future videos. So it's just a matter of paying attention to the metrics and making sure that you've got a video that people are willing to share.
Yeah, you touched on something we spoke to a couple times when it came to digital storytelling and the idea of, coming up with an idea that we talk about the 3 R's, whether it's real, it's relevant, and it's repeatable. So once you hit that sweet spot where someone is sharing some piece of your content, then obviously your reach increases tenfold. And so, having a multimedia person on your team is critical. As we learned with our client, we have, a couple students in class who are willing to get out there and take photos and take video and really document things as best as they can. And you can just see how much better those sorts of posts do than something with just words. So.
Right, and by the way, you touched on it. You used the word document. A lot of people believe they always have to be in the process of coming up with the concept. A lot of times, it's just about documenting what's going on around you.
It's true. That's true. Yeah, just being an observer. Okay, so next question comes from our student Gretchen. So Gretchen, why don't you hop on and say hello and take it away?
Hi, Ryan. Can you
Hello.
hear me? Hi. So I looked through several months of posts, and one thing that started to strike me was the volume of posts on Twitter. I noticed on many days there were 5, and a couple days I saw 7 posts a day. And then also on Facebook, you were averaging 2 posts a day. So I'm wondering, and I did see a little bit of a repeat in things. I started to notice some patterns. So I noticed there's a huge variety of the types of posts that you create, and they did tend to fall into some buckets. But I was wondering if you could give us an idea as to what your formula is and your philosophy around content and a formula, and then how often you might repeat a post and that sort of thing, just to give us a structure for, a week or a month and then over long term.
You bet. Great question. I joined Loves in 2014. Before that, I spent a decade with Hearst Television. I worked as a digital executive producer for the ABC affiliate in Oklahoma City. and I have colleagues at local TV stations all across the country. And we would often post to Facebook, for example, 20 to 30 times a day. I mean, in the news world, you just post a ton. One of the things I noticed at a corporate level when I first joined Love's is that a lot of brands were adhering to a no more than one post a day type of philosophy. And I always thought, in a world of supply and demand, that we could be doing much more. And more than one Facebook post in a day. People can withstand more tweets. And as we learn more about mobile, we realize that we're at the mercy of the thumb. We're all bartering for attention. Before we can sell somebody a product or a service, we've got to get their attention. And so all I wanted to do at the start when I came here in 2014 was do more. The first thing I asked the team to do was start a blog, and there were a lot of discussions about how much content we would create and who would be responsible for it. And coming from a news world, I was like, I think we'll be able to manage. I wrote a lot of stories per day. We can figure this out as we go along. But as it pertains to a philosophy and a strategy and a formula for Facebook, right now we're trying to do about 15 posts per week. That's a couple a day. I'd be able to do a little bit more. We want every post to be quality. No throwaways on Facebook. And by the way, not a lot of repetition on Facebook. Where you'll see most of the repetition, and you nailed the numbers, by the way, is on Twitter. For every piece of content, I try to ask the team to come up with 3 to 5 ways to tweet that one piece of content. 3 to 5 different ways, just slightly different. And it depends on how important that piece of content is to the business. Not everything is equally important. If it's something that pertains to fleet and fuel sales, very important. If it's storage, we try to help that business as a newcomer to the Love's family of companies, but maybe we won't be doing that long term. So it really depends upon the business unit and their needs by how much we tweet that one piece of content. But right now on Twitter, we're trying to do a minimum of 40 tweets per week, and I think it can withstand more. I don't see any reason why you couldn't have up to 10 to 15 tweets per day from a brand if it's a good piece of content. We had a speaker at one of our councils, and I can't really get into a lot of that, but I know her personally. Her name is Serena Ehrlich, and if you ever get a chance to follow her at Serena, do so. A lot of great tips for content, and she's always told me Monday is for data. So we try to, and Monday and mornings are for data. So we try to do a lot of things in the morning that are like, did you know? Things to make people feel smarter about their day, briefing them. We have strategies on the weekends for lighter, more fun content. But at the end of the day, it comes down to I look to try to get a couple of posts per day on Facebook and try to get 5 to 7 tweets out per day. So I hope that helps a little bit. And by the way, I think we're going to try to do more in the future, but I think there is a cap. I don't think it's going to get too much crazier than that.
And I noticed, can I do a quick follow up on that? So I noticed that you do spread them out. And so timing wise throughout the day, how do you decide what goes where?
There are 2 sweet spots for particularly on Twitter, 7 o'clock in the morning, 10 o'clock at night. 7 o'clock because people are waking up, and 10 o'clock because of the 10 o'clock news. And so we just try to spread it out. I mean, there really isn't much of a formula besides trying to put some space. We realize that we probably need to leave some gaps in the middle of the day, just in case we need to do an impromptu tweet. And then on weekends when we have a NASCAR race, we've got a NASCAR driver. People are liable to be bombarded a little bit, but outside of that, we just try to just put a gap there.
Great, thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you, Ryan. So our next question comes from our student, Jordan. So Jordan, go ahead, introduce yourself and go ahead with your question, please.
Hi, Ryan.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
I can.
Okay. So since social media is always changing, how has Love's social media presence changed since you began working there? And how do you keep up with the rapid changes?
Well, and I noted some of this in a previous question. First thing I did when I came on board, I have somewhat of an SEO background in that I understand and can execute the basics of on-site SEO, inbound marketing, things that will get you to page 1 on Google. Being in the news industry helped a lot with that. So the first thing I asked for was a blog, because we need content to be able to amplify it on social. We need content to lead people down the funnel back to loves.com and get them to a salesperson or to get them to one of our stores. So the first thing that I did was we implemented a blog. The second thing is we started posting a lot more. But we also developed relationships with the business units within Loves. We have 17,000 employees here. We have 1,500 at the corporate office, and we have upwards of 15,500 across the country. And we're going to be up at 20,000 at the end of the year. So develop different relationships with these different business units. And what we found early on is that challenge above and beyond anything else is recruiting at the field level in our stores and recruiting corporately. So we got heavily involved with LinkedIn, Glassdoor, and Indeed, and we produce content for those channels as well. So number one, we started a blog. Anything that helps you with Google SEO is not going to be a bad thing. You can amplify on your digital channels, on your social channels. And if you're like me and wanting to do more Facebook posts, wanting to tweet more, you now have more content that you can do that. But also, we didn't limit ourselves to just Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. We also incorporated LinkedIn and Glassdoor because those were central to things that the business needed, which was to recruit and hire more employees across the country.
Great. That was very informative. Thank you.
You bet.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. So next we have Janine Richards. I don't think we didn't get a chance to test your audio, Janine, but take it away. We'll see if everything works out.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can.
Hi, I'm Janine. Fun fact about me, I'll be moving to Dublin, Ireland in a couple of months for work. My question, it's funny because I feel like you answered my first 5 questions. So now I'm trying to put something together. So how do you identify your brand advocates on social media and leverage their stories or their content that they post about your company to actually make an impact and, increase engagement?
Well, there are, one of the biggest struggles that I've had in this role, in this industry, is identifying brand advocates, because there aren't a lot of great content creators among those brand advocates. There is a husband and wife truck driving team named George and Wendy, and they're pretty popular. But they are loyalists to Pilot Flying J. They're not Love's customers. There are a handful of other folks on Twitter who will share a lot of our tweets, but they're not folks who create a lot of independent content on their own. So we definitely try to create content that interests them, but we have yet to develop any serious partnerships with anybody for the purpose of creating an ambassadorship or an advocacy program. I will tell you that it is our belief that 1 out of every 5 of our social followers is an internal employee. So we have as much of a focus on developing internal ambassadors as we do anything else. And we have an intranet called The Wave, and we try to use that as a mechanism to get people engaged and to let them know about the content that we have on social that they can share. We are on the lookout for anybody externally who would be willing to be an advocate for us and for our brand. There just aren't a lot of content creators in the trucking world who happen to also be Love's customers. We don't want somebody to want to develop a partnership with us for the purpose of creating content if they're not already a Love's loyalist. There are a lot of Love's loyalists out there, and we want a true believer.
Okay.
Excellent. Thanks, Ryan. So our next question comes from, again, a student who submitted a question online previously. And this is from Nora. And she says, last year, Loves became a national sponsor of the Children's Miracle Network College Dance Marathons. In addition to the win of supporting those student fundraising efforts, was there also a gain in new younger followers or an audience?
We hope so. This is our second year doing Dance Marathon, and it's produced gains in fundraising at virtually every university that we've done this. And we hope to be as successful one day as the University of Delaware is with their dance marathons. We hope that we've gained more of a following from people in that 15 to 24 age group. We've definitely seen it on Instagram. We don't have a Snapchat right now for the business, given that that's just a 24-hour cycle of content, and that we only have a team of 4, and really from a social perspective, a team of 2. We can't really justify it at this point. Besides, there aren't a lot of truckers out there using Snapchat, although from a stability perspective, I think you're going to see 30 to 50-year-olds really get on board with Snapchat and in general story platforms in the future. So the thing that appeals to us, corporate social responsibility perspective, because culture and corporate social responsibility are a big deal to the Love family. But we also find that it also coincides with something that millennials in particular value. And we're not necessarily looking strategically at gaining millennials as customers, although of course we want that. We need a workforce. We need a workforce to work out in the field and run our stores. We need a workforce here corporately to help us grow. And we want to engage with great people who care, who happen to be smart at the same time. And we figure that the people who are working at these dance marathons are also leaders in their community. So it's a win-win. So I hope that we've gained them as followers. And I think, whether or not we can get these folks on board to work for us in the future and become our customers, that will be the real tell.
Great. I think it's interesting to hear that your approach to and sort of just perspective of seeing that millennial audience as they are valuable, yet your audience and your current customer bases, and you're not coming up with some very involved heavy lift content plan or strategy to try to reach this specific audience, because you're in the place right now where you don't necessarily need to or have to. And so recognizing that and not diving all the way into some Snapchat sort of content plan or strategy just to make it happen because it exists and that's where they are. I think that there's value in that too. So we talk a lot about making, strategic decisions based on bandwidth and making sure that you're not just running in a direction because that's where everybody else is running. So
right. Sometimes it's good to be second. Like in golf, if anybody out there golfs, oftentimes you want the first person to go so you can see which way the wind's blowing, how the hole is playing. Going second, there's an advantage. You get to watch the other folks do it and you can learn from it. So that's what we're doing.
Great. Next up, we're all the way back to the top. So we're going to go back to Marty with her next question. Go ahead, Marty.
Thank you. So this is all really, really interesting and helpful. And I also work in television shopping. So one of the things that's really important to success in that arena is, I'll call it backyard fence, and being genuine and really engaging in the emotional side of what people want in their lives and kind of being their emotional partner in a way. So you have all these great heartwarming stories about your employees and your customers. And so I wondered how much thought you put into that aspect of really trying to engage with people on a human level, and how you found that success to be.
Okay, so I love that question. I've got a buddy who lives in D.C., and I grew up with him in Henrietta, Oklahoma, and we have philosophical discussions. And one of the things that we've always talked about is the thing that separates us from monkeys is empathy. Being able to look somebody in the eye and know how they feel. When we engage with customers, if they have a complaint, if they have a compliment, if they have a concern, if they have a question, is to offer them our time, offer them our gratitude. And if they've got a concern or a complaint, offer them our empathy. Really try to get inside of what they're. So it's really important to us. We know that the stories we tell, if it causes a tear, we know that that's going to be a win. We want to play to emotion, but we also want it to be authentic, because we feel that if we have the empathy for our customers, we serve those who want to be served, we're never going to lose. I mean, truly, if somebody comes to us and if they've got a question, concern, or complaint, and if we try to serve those who really want to be served and give it our all, that's a win-win for us. So we're constantly thinking about that. We never try to approach anything from a perspective of being cold. Always just try to have some empathy and understand where the other person's coming from and their feeling in the situation.
That's really good, and I think that it can be a double-edged sword. You have to be genuine and authentic in those kinds of communications because people don't want to be patronized too. Not to throw rocks at Disney, but I've had experiences there where I really felt like they didn't really care about me as a customer. They just were giving me fake customer service, and it didn't feel authentic.
Great point, and I would tell you, there's a lot to be said for the communicating with people on social media because they can't see body language, they can't hear tone. They understand when they're getting a boilerplate answer. Sometimes a boilerplate answer is a starter. Hey, we apologize for your inconvenience, or we hear you, we thank you for reaching out. Can you offer some more details? It's pretty standard. However, when you're talking to them one-on-one, sometimes I'll offer them my name. Say, hey, my name is Ryan. I'm talking to you from home. I want to help get you to the right person. Can you give me some specifics? Anything that actually personalizes it and gives them the sort of sense that you're looking at them eye to eye, even though you're just typing words, I think that helps a whole bunch.
Definitely. Thank you.
You bet.
Great. Excellent. Caitlin, you are up next.
Okay. So I noticed Love's, I think they had, I think you had maybe 27 sponsored schools this year. Was there anything specific that you had to communicate to them about their own, social campaigns they were running, or were the schools pretty much able to create their own kind of strategy and for their different demographics?
Well, last year was our first year doing this, and I think that they ran things themselves for the most part in their first year. And we encouraged them to, we encouraged more centralization in the second year. We have a fantastic partnership with Children's Miracle Network Hospitals out of Salt Lake City. And there is a liaison, a coordinator. Her name is Heather King. And she is our liaison to each one of these schools. So long before Dance Marathon started going for 2017, we had meetings with these coordinators and we gave them our expectations. We gave them tips. We asked these teams to use certain hashtags, to develop certain types of content, making sure to always to tag us. After their event, write up a blog post that we can use. Be active in the hours before your event, during your event, and make sure that you tag us, because in addition to anything that you're doing in terms of fundraising there at the event, we want our employees to see that we're active in the community. We want candidates to see that we're active in the community. So we basically set these expectations up, communicated them to our liaison, and that liaison, Heather King in this case, communicated it to everybody else, and she did a masterful job this year. And I'm just hoping we can continue to improve upon it in years 3, 4, 5, and beyond.
Yeah, you could definitely tell when I was searching the hashtags, everybody was populating. So it's very insightful. Thank you.
And by the way, an interesting challenge in that is that if you're familiar with Dance Marathon, you know that their hashtag is like FTK for the kids.
Yeah. Yep.
But but we could not use that. Apparently, there's something trademark wise. So we developed Loves for the Kids, and I think that's something we're going to stick with in years beyond.
I liked it.
Thank you.
So our next question, we're going to go to Gretchen. I had David next, but David, we sort of touched on that. So I might dig into your questions that you submitted and try to find an additional one. So we're just going to go ahead to Gretchen.
Okay. So Ryan, I noticed as I was looking through both Facebook and Twitter, I noticed that you replied to negative comments, and which is always, that's always a, it's interesting to know what people's philosophies are on that. So I'd like to know what your philosophy is on that, and then what any policies that you may have in place are on that, and the voice that you use in managing negative comments. And then I also have a follow-up question to that.
Awesome. I love this question because one of the things that I noticed when I came on board, coming from news to corporate, not just looking at Love's, but looking at all companies, is that I was noticing this trend in 2014 of what I called the apology train. Anytime I would go to a Facebook page, I would see, we're sorry for your experience. We're sorry for this, we're sorry for that. And I just thought, from a perspective of authenticity and genuineness, that really the person on the other hand most of the time is not sorry. They're trying to help the person, and I just thought a better approach, as opposed to getting the phrase "we're sorry" associated with your brand more than anything else. My thought was, show gratitude. You're never going to lose by showing gratitude. Out. And at that point, you try to serve those who want to be served. Try to find a solution to those who are genuinely looking for one, but it starts with thanking them for reaching out. So that, philosophically, that's the first thing that we do. I'm lucky in that we have a small team, and in a lot of ways, you want to grow as a team and have a lot more people, but it's a lot easier to manage when your social media quarterback, if you will, is so knowledgeable, and it's just you and her. So from a perspective of dealing with negative comments, we don't have so much traffic that we can't handle it on our own, and we approach it first and foremost by thanking them for reaching out, documenting the situation, whether they post to our visitor wall, whether they tweet at us or private message us, and then it's not that we hand them off to customer service, but there's a customer engagement team that we interact with and try to provide them a customized solution. And then in situations where we think the issue might be a little bit bigger than a one-off, we have sort of like small, medium, and large crisis communication plans in place that we can handle things from there. But philosophically, just the two things: reaching out and try to solve the problem. But the second thing is that we try to save our apologies for times when we sorry and really are sorry. If we say that we're sorry, we really are sorry. So we just want it to be genuine.
I love that. So then, is there, when you're responding to negative comments, is there any sort of, are there discussions that happen first? Is there an approval process? What happens? Does someone just kind of get on and you trust them and they go with responding, or is it managed?
It's a little of both. It depends on the situation. If it's a situation where a truck driver had a bad experience at a single store, we can usually manage that without a discussion. However, I remember one night, and I'm just sort of like telling you a little inside baseball, there's a contemporary Christian singer named Jamie Grace. And she had a particular issue at one of our locations in Kentucky. And we have this thing in our stores that's called Code Orange. And Code Orange simply means that a lot of people are coming into the store. A bus is stopped, all hands on deck. But if you don't know what that is, you just hear Code Orange and you think that you and the people who are coming in with you are being singled out. And we realized that might be an issue on that particular night, that it wasn't a one-off. And so what happens is that we do have discussions, rigorous discussions. We had a situation at one of our stores where a clerk unfortunately said something negative to somebody who was wearing a Black Lives Matter t-shirt. We had a rigorous discussion about that. Do you respond in mass, something that's like a statement, or do you work with the individual? We have rigorous discussions. We play through worst case scenarios. We think about whatever the next steps are going to be. Will the media call about this? Is this person looking for a solution? How can we serve them? And oftentimes these discussions that we have internally are not easy. Sometimes they can be debates. Sometimes the business wants you to be conservative, whereas I'm saying, no, we need to address this issue. I would say that I'm pretty proud that we've had a terrific track record on this. And I think it's because we have open and honest discussions about these issues as they come up, and we're transparent about it. And we try to cite best practices, but we also try to cite our own feelings. And it's very respectful and rigorous. But I would say that 90% of the time, it really is just a one-off where you're able to help that person, get them to customer service, get them some My Love Rewards points. All good. but it's the other 10% that you worry about.
So does it ever get overwhelming with having to respond, or do you pick and choose like what you respond to? It seemed to me that you responded to most.
Yeah, we do. There was a conference that I went to once that had the McDonald's Senior Director of Social Media. His name is Rick Wyan. And he said, serve those who want to be served and ignore the trolls. And he showed a little cartoon of Homer Simpson crawling back into the bushes. And so we do look at that. We're looking for customers who are actually needing and wanting help. And if you're trolling us, we probably aren't going to engage, because I genuinely believe that feeding the trolls will cause more people to be encouraged and do it. And as I look at our competitors, particularly Pilot Flying J, we see them, periodically they'll feed the trolls, and it just causes more people to post. Remind me, what was the first part of that question that follow-up that you just had?
Does it get overwhelming having to keep on top of, responding to everything?
On the big ones where your internal intuition is telling you that this could be big, you worry. You want to do the right thing. You don't want to be the next United. I mean, I think first and foremost, I can protect myself as a manager by just remembering that I'm a human and reminding myself that I'm also a customer. That I'm also, that I've got myself in that consumer or that customer's position as a human. But the overwhelming part is the worry that you might get it wrong, not from the perspective of your job, but just getting it wrong.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Yeah, I think what really helps, Ryan, you navigate a lot of that is, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. What really is helping you navigate that is your external relations hat and your journalism hat, and knowing what's going to make a headline or what's going to make news, and when a train is left, and when to get in front of it if you need to. And so any kind of digital marketing team where you have somebody who's doing and running the social media channels, I connect with our external relations person at least 3 times a day. I'll shoot her something and say, this came through. I'm not planning on responding. Do you agree? We realize this is just a one-off. This could set a fire, a blaze, or here's one that I really believe that I want to respond to. This is a mom and she has a thought, and I want to get, it might get attention, but I'm willing to take that risk because it becomes noticed. As Gretchen said, people do look through and see how responsive a brand is. And if they let things hang out like that, it doesn't go unnoticed. So hats off to you. You're certainly in the right spot for that company. Yeah. Our next question comes from, again, one of our students listening online. This is from Nikki, and she wants to get a little bit into the tools that you guys have. So she wants to know, you mentioned Meltwater, which is a tool that we're very familiar with at the university, but we're looking to learn what resources you have for tracking your social media content. So do you use a content management system? And if you're willing to share any tools that you guys use, if that's information that you're okay to share, that we would be happy to hear.
You bet. So when I joined in 2014, the company used Sysomos. And it's mostly a social listening tool. But I found pretty quickly, once I got acclimated to all our channels and all the folks talking to us, we didn't need it. There's not that much chatter. I mean, we have chatter. It's just not so much that a couple of people can't look at it by just, checking out our feed. And that was $866 a month. So we just decided, let's save a little bit of money. So we don't have a social listening tool. We don't use Meltwater for that. We use Meltwater for traditional media and seeing which stories are coming through for us, for Pilot Flying J, for TA Petro. And for, by the way, one of the businesses I didn't mention that we have is Trillium CNG. We have a CNG business. It's pretty successful also. From a content management perspective, we use Hootsuite for the evenings and the weekends. What I've told other people who work in social media is use a scheduling tool at your own risk. You use a scheduling tool 24/7, you're really obligating yourself to pay attention to the news cycle 24/7, because as soon as that terrorist attack happens, as soon as that incident happens in your community, you're tone deaf if you're tweeting about free ice cream. it's just one of those things. But we as a team are so attuned to listening to the news cycle and paying attention that we are willing to take that chance and do some scheduling at night and on the weekends. And by the way, and it's not a great thing about society in general, but it's started to happen so often now that really there's some desensitization. So we use Hootsuite lightly. In terms of other tools, there's a little tool that doesn't cost a lot of money that I would encourage you to go find. It's called Fan Page Karma. It's really wonderful. It's out of Germany. I don't think it's terribly well known, but I needed a tool that would allow me to compare our audience and our data on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, you name it, versus our competitors. And on Facebook, I say on Facebook, you really can't get below the surface on many of these platforms relative to your competition. But Fan Page Karma can get there, and it doesn't cost a heck of a lot of money. So it really just a very interesting tool to go look out for. There is a tool called SEM Rush that I use, but that's really SEM Rush, if you know much about search engine optimization, you know that back in the day, there were some techniques that people would use that would get them in trouble with Google. And so one of the ways to be able to tell whether or not an ambassador or an advocate is worth their salt is to go look to see how much search engine traffic is going to their site. So if somebody comes to you and say, hey, I'm a blogger, work with me, you can say, really? What's your audience like? And you don't really have to ask them because they're going to tell you it's great. You can go to SEM Rush and see how much search engine traffic is going to their site. Google will tell you how worthwhile they are. And so that's a tool that we use for that, but it's not really for social media content management or measurement per se.
Well, those are some great, I've never even heard of Fan Page Karma, and I'm sure I saw a couple of everybody was writing that down, so we're going to be Googling that one, I'm sure. I'll dive in.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds very interesting. Okay, so we have about 10 or 15 minutes left of your time, so we're going to try to crank out a couple more questions. And next up, I have Jordan.
Okay, so I'm wondering, why do you think Love social media marketing has been so successful? And what strategy do you think was most effective in achieving that success?
Well, thank you very much for the compliment. I think long term, I think the communication side of what we're doing on social media is definitely others should follow, but simply because it comes from a point of authenticity and empathy. I think if all brands, I think if United were to have done that yesterday, they wouldn't be in the position they're in right now. From a strategic marketing perspective, I think it's yet to be seen how successful we are. Because I think eventually businesses like Love's, we need to be selling things as the result of what we're doing on social media, and not it content simply be about perception and community and things that are really sort of intangible. I think what's most successful though is that we don't simply look at Facebook as a tool, as Twitter as a tool, as Instagram as a tool. We look at this as platforms to engage with real human customers. If you look at the truck, if you know anything about truckers, you know that they're on the road for 8 to 10 hours a day, and then they have to stop wherever they are. And that's why if you've ever driven down the highway and see a truck driver on the side of the road, it's not because he or she chose to stop there. It's because they reached their limit that they could drive for the day. They had to stop right there. So much time with Love's as they do often at their own homes. And so the realization that we might be the only human that they talk to that day besides their boss, that's a big deal to us. So I think any success we've had to this point just centers on being human, providing authenticity.
Great, thank you.
That's excellent. I mean, I'm sure those listening and those on the call, you can feel the genuine and kindness coming from Ryan just as a human, and that just he embodies the Love's brand. I mean, if that's the strategy and it's coming from him, it's like your mission statement is sort of I feel how you approach life, and so it's reflective on these digital channels. So yeah. So we have, well, there's one, Cheryl was on the call and then she hopped off. So we'll have to, I'm going to have her tweet this question to you later because she grew up in Oklahoma City. And so I'm sure she'll want to ask you that on her own. So we're going to go to, who else is on the call? We're going to go to you, Janine, next, if you had a question ready to go.
Yes. So I wanted to know, what brands do you follow on social media or Love follows, whether it's brands you like or some of your competitors, and what can they do to improve, and what things do you like that they do that you wish you could do?
So as a brand, as a company, and it maybe it's beyond the fact that we have hearts in our logo. Southwest is number one. We in fact we liken ourselves to Southwest Airlines quite a bit, and we like their spirit, the way that they serve customers. We love their all bags fly free sort of mantra. In the trucking world right now, there's a whole big issue over truck parking. There are a lot of truck stops that are charging for reserved parking for drivers, and our philosophy is that drivers, as long as they come to Love, truck drivers, they park for free. That's sort of like our version of all bags fly free. We love how they treat customers online. I also think Walmart is underrated. There is a fella from Oklahoma City named Blake Jackson who took over their social media department a couple years ago. And ever since then, they've just been on the way up. He convinced their new president, Doug McMillan, to start a public profile page on Facebook. And he convinced Sam Club's CEO, John Furner, to start a public profile page on Facebook. And they're both worth a follow because Walmart, for all the issues that they've had with regard to employee relations and public perception, they're on the way up in terms of doing things right on social, in terms of creating content to change perception. I like those two. I like Target, big fan of Target. And let's see, those are the three that come to mind for me right now. But I think Southwest and Walmart are probably my two favorites.
Excellent.
For the time being.
All right, great. So it looks like Cheryl's back on the call. I want to give her an opportunity to ask you her question. So go ahead, Cheryl.
I thought I was supposed to. Can you hear me? Okay. Everybody. Okay. Hi. Yeah, I grew up in Oklahoma City, so I've been to Love's, and we go to South Texas, and it was always a treat to go in and see what's inside, and love the peanut brittle for sure.
You bet. Absolutely.
I was very interested to know about your co-branded marketing social media. And since you have so many partnerships with a lot of food, of course, in the locations, could you speak a little bit about your co-branded efforts? And then whether you use co-branded marketing with your partners for fundraising?
We do on fundraising. Children's Miracle Network, they are what I would call an equal partner because they are an equal content creator. They create content that we amplify. We create content that they amplify. It is very much symbiotic. It is very much win-win. We don't do so much with our restaurant peers or our hotel peers. We're in the hotel business now. We have Best Western, Marriott hotels and things like that. They have their own rules that they play by. They have their own teams. And by the way, they have their own challenges. If you look at Subway in particular and some of the PR challenges they've had over the past couple of years, it's not necessarily something that we've wanted to take on ourselves because it just happens to be that there's a Subway in our location. It just happens to be that there's a Wendy's in our location. And while there may be one-off things, folks aren't looking to our social media for information about Bojangles or Chester's Chicken. They're here for Love's. They'll go to Chester's Chicken for that type of information. However, I will tell you that if Dairy Queen came to us and said that they had something awesome that they wanted to partner with us on, we're all ears all the time. It just hasn't happened. And the times that we've actually reached out to those other organizations, which has been few and far between, there's sort of a level of bureaucracy dealing with a national brand that big that they have teams that are a lot bigger. I've got a team of 4 people. We can be pretty agile. They can't.
Okay. Well, I noticed that you did the campaign with $1 for every cup of 24-ounce coffee. Was it last year? And that was your own coffee?
You bet.
Okay.
It was, and I love that you mentioned that, because that was an idea that came from my boss, Kyla Turner, on the fly. It happened one evening. She had an idea. Our campaign is at the last week of August to the end of September every year, and she literally came up with that idea like on a Thursday night and said, "Can we do this next week?" And we're like, it wasn't that easy because you have to get operations involved, but that is our coffee is branded Java Amore, and we were able to work with our own operations team. So that was pretty easy. That's the Love's brand of coffee. So
great, thank you.
You bet.
Excellent. So we're going to close out the session tonight with a question from Marty, because I know a lot of students always want to hear from the experts that we bring in as guests, such as yourselves, your thoughts on the future. So go ahead, Marty, and take it away.
Okay, this has been terrific. So thank you very much for your time, Ryan. And what I'm curious about is, as the social world is swirling, it's changing so quickly, it's hard minute to minute to keep up with, you know, how to coach your company on what, make recommendations about what the best platforms are to invest in. So I wonder, as you look out 1, 3, 5 years, it's hard to look past 5 minutes, I know, but as you look out into the future, what platforms do you think are going to be the most important? We mentioned Snapchat. You know, there's a lot of debate about Facebook and how long it's going to be around, what's going to happen with Twitter and LinkedIn, and I just would really appreciate hearing your thoughts.
You bet. And first off, thank you for having me here. This is I love getting to talk about this. Social media. Loves Travel Stops. This is a great company. Jobs.loves.com. I got to tell you, there are lots of opportunities across the country. But when I talk about platforms and what's going out there, I think it behooves all of us to be expert users. I've downloaded the Musical.ly app. I don't really know what I'm doing with it just yet. I've heard about a new app called Peach. I use Snapchat, not as well as I should. I could be better on Twitter. I try to use Instagram beyond pictures of food, but I think you have to be a good user. But from a marketing perspective, where I would invest my money right now, none of them are close to being as big as Facebook. It's not close. And the thing is Twitter is never going to catch up to Facebook. Instagram is never going to catch up to Facebook, and it's not likely that Snapchat is even going to come close, even if it comes into full maturity. I will tell you the platform that I would be focused on 1, 3 to 5 years down the road, and in fact, I would even say 10 years down the road, and that's YouTube. If you have any 7-year-olds in your life, you know they don't watch TV. Gamer Chad. That's what they watch. That is their world, and it's going to continue to be their world. That's what they grow up with. I grew up with television. My grandparents grew up with radio. They're growing up with YouTube. I would become well-versed as a content creator on YouTube in video in general, but not only that, but learn how to use YouTube from the perspective as an SEO expert and a YouTuber expert. Realize that right now, the one way that you can get your video seen on YouTube more than anything else is captioning to that and adding it in a way that it actually works for people. You're not just plopping it in there. The other platform I would look at, of course, is keep an eye on is Snapchat, because I do think that 30, 40, and 50-year-olds are going to start using it more. But the problem with Snapchat is that the content goes away in 24 hours. And really what you want to do as a communications team is create this library of content that provides you with residual benefit. The great thing about a blog is that I write an article today and it gets viewed for the next 5 years. If I create content for Snapchat, it goes away in 24 hours.
Very good. Great points. Thank you.
You bet. Thanks.
This has been so insightful. I'm so thrilled that we got to have your time tonight. I really appreciate it. I know I was following along with the Twitter chat, and we did just blow you up on Twitter. So sorry for that in advance.
No, thank you. Thank you.
Good. Yes. So if there's anyone else, I'm going to leave it out to the students. If you have any further questions, as you can see that Ryan is a very responsive and genuine human, so I'm sure he'd be happy to tweet you back in his 140 characters to respond to anything we didn't get to tonight. So thanks tonight for a really great chat, everybody. I came away learning some things, and I hope you guys did too.
Thank you so much,
Thank you,
Ryan.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.
We'll see you in
Have
Delaware.
a great night.
Thank you.